Captain Matt Urban grabs the bazooka from the dying gunner and turns to the ammo carrier. The man is terrified, pinned down by machine gun fire while two German tanks rake their positions with cannon rounds. Urban does not ask him to follow. He tells him. They crawl through the hedgerows toward the tanks, staying low while bullets crack overhead. Urban stands up in full view of the enemy, shoulders the bazooka and fires. The first tank explodes. He reloads, fires again, and the second tank burns. His company charges forward and routs the Germans. 4 hours later, a German tank gun hits Urban in the leg at close range. He refuses evacuation and leads another attack the next morning at 5 in the morning. 1 hour later, he is hit again. This is just the beginning of the longest 81 days of his life. It is June 11th, 1944, and the 2nd Battalion of the 60th Infantry Regiment lands on Utah Beach in Normandy, France. D-Day was 5 days ago. The initial assault succeeded, but the Allies are still fighting to break out of the beachhead. The hedgerows of Normandy are some of the most brutal terrain American soldiers have ever encountered. Each field is surrounded by thick earthen walls topped with dense vegetation. The Germans have turned every hedgerow into a defensive position. Tanks cannot push through without exposing themselves. Infantry cannot advance without crossing open ground under machine gun fire. It is a meat grinder. Captain Matthew Louis Urban commands Company F. He is 24 years old, born in Buffalo, New York, to Polish immigrant parents. His original surname was Urbanovich. He joined the Army before the war, went through officer candidate school, and has already fought in North Africa and Sicily with the 9th Infantry Division. His men know him as a leader who does not ask them to do anything he will not do himself. That quality will save their lives multiple times in the coming weeks. It will also nearly kill him over and over again. The mission for June 14th is to attack German positions near Renouf, France. Company F moves out at dawn. They cross the first hedgerow and immediately come under heavy fire. Small arms, machine guns, and then the sound every infantryman dreads, the deep boom of tank cannons. 2 German tanks are positioned in the hedgerows ahead, and they are methodically destroying Urban's company. Men are dying in the open. The advance has stopped. If something does not change in the next few minutes, Company F will be decimated. Urban watches his bazooka gunner get hit. The man goes down and the bazooka falls into the dirt. The ammo carrier freezes. Urban does not hesitate. He picks up the bazooka, grabs the ammo carrier by the shoulder, and tells him they are going after the tanks. The carrier looks at him like he is insane. Maybe he is. But the alternative is staying in place and dying. They crawl through the hedgerows. The German tanks are firing continuously, their cannons tearing through the earthen walls and shredding anyone caught in the open. Urban moves from cover to cover, the ammo carrier following behind him. They get close enough that Urban can see the tank commanders in their turrets. He stands up. He is completely exposed to enemy fire from multiple positions. He shoulders the bazooka, aims, and fires. The first tank explodes. The ammo carrier hands him another rocket. Urban reloads, aims at the second tank, and fires again. The second tank burns. The German infantry supporting the tanks breaks and runs. Urban's company, seeing the tanks destroyed, charges forward and routs the remaining enemy forces. The attack succeeds. The objective is taken. And Urban has just shown his men what is possible when someone refuses to accept defeat. But the day is not over. Later that afternoon, near Orglands, Urban is leading another attack when a German tank crew spots him. They traverse their turret and fire the 37mm gun directly at him. The shell hits him in the left leg. Shrapnel tears through muscle and bone. A medic rushes to him, bandages the wound, and tells him he needs to be evacuated. Urban refuses. He orders his men to carry him on a stretcher while he continues directing the company from position to position. At 5 o'clock the next morning, June 15th, Urban leads another assault. He is still on the stretcher, his leg wrapped in bloody bandages. 1 hour into the attack, he is hit again. Now he has 2 wounds. The battalion surgeon tells him he must be evacuated. This time, Urban does not have a choice. He is carried to the rear and put on a transport to England. Urban is in a hospital in England recovering from his wounds. It is mid-July 1944. The battle in the hedgerows is still raging. Urban hears reports of the casualties his unit is taking. The 2nd Battalion has lost officers and experienced NCOs. The replacements coming in are green, untested, and dying at alarming rates. Urban knows his men need leadership. They need someone who understands the terrain, the tactics, and the enemy. So he makes a decision that will define the rest of his war. He leaves the hospital without authorization. His leg is still healing. He is not cleared for duty, but he walks out of the hospital, makes his way to the coast, and hitchhikes back to France. He catches rides on supply trucks, transport convoys, and anything else heading toward the front. He arrives at the 2nd Battalion command post near St. Lo, still limping, still in pain, but ready to fight. His men are stunned to see him. The officers tell him he should not be there. Urban ignores them. He reports for duty and immediately takes command of the lead elements pushing toward the German lines. Within hours, he is back in combat. And the Germans, who have started to recognize him on the battlefield, begin calling him something else. They call him the Gray Ghost, the officer who keeps coming back from the dead. Let us know in the comments where you are watching this from. Are you in the United States, Germany, the United Kingdom, or somewhere else? We would love to know who is keeping these stories alive. Meanwhile, Urban is about to face one of the most desperate situations of his entire war. It is late July 1944. The 2nd Battalion is attacking a heavily fortified German position. They have armor support, 2 American tanks that are supposed to suppress the enemy machine guns and anti-tank guns dug in on a hill ahead. But both support tanks are knocked out before they reach the objective. A 3rd tank is still operational, but its commander and gunner have been killed. The tank is sitting in the open, unable to move because German machine gun and anti-tank fire is concentrated on it. The battalion attack has stalled. Men are pinned down in ditches and foxholes. If they stay where they are, the German artillery will find them and kill them. If they try to advance without the tank, the machine guns will cut them down. Urban arrives at the forward position and assesses the situation. He sees the abandoned tank. He sees the German strongpoint on the hill, and he knows exactly what has to be done. He finds a lieutenant in charge of the remaining armor. Urban explains his plan. Someone needs to mount the tank, operate the machine gun, and lead the assault while the tank moves forward. The lieutenant agrees and tries to mount the tank. He is shot and killed instantly. A sergeant tries next. He is also killed. The German gunners have the tank zeroed in. Anyone who tries to climb onto it is dead within seconds. Urban is still recovering from his leg wound. He is using a makeshift cane to walk, but he does not ask anyone else to take the risk. He throws down his cane, limps through the scathing fire, and climbs onto the tank. Bullets ricochet off the metal around him. He orders the driver to move forward. The tank lurches ahead. Urban, completely exposed to enemy fire, mans the .50 caliber machine gun and opens up on the German positions. The effect is immediate. The German machine gunners are forced to take cover. The anti-tank gun shifts fire to the advancing tank but cannot penetrate its armor at this angle. Urban keeps firing, raking the hillside with continuous bursts. His battalion, seeing their commander standing on top of a moving tank under heavy fire, surges forward. They charge the German position, overrun it, and destroy the enemy strongpoint. The attack succeeds because one man refused to let his battalion die in a ditch. If you are enjoying this story and want more untold accounts from World War II, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We are bringing you stories that most history books never covered. But Urban is not done getting wounded. On August 2nd, 1944, Captain Urban is hit in the chest by shell fragments during another attack. The battalion surgeon examines him and recommends immediate evacuation. Urban refuses. He stays with his men. 4 days later, on August 6th, he is promoted to commander of the 2nd Battalion. He is now responsible for hundreds of men, multiple companies, and coordinating with artillery, armor, and air support. Most officers in his condition would take the promotion as an excuse to move to a safer command post in the rear. Urban does the opposite. He leads from the front. On August 15, 1944, Urban is wounded again. The details of this wound are not as well documented as the others, but the official records confirm that he was hit and refused evacuation. This is now his 5th wound in 2 months. He has been shot, hit by shrapnel, struck by tank fire, and wounded by shell fragments. Each time he has refused to leave his men. Each time he has returned to the fight. The Germans are no longer surprised when he reappears on the battlefield. They expect it. The gray ghost does not die. But on September 3, 1944, near here, Belgium, Urban finally meets a wound he cannot ignore. The 2nd Battalion is tasked with establishing a crossing point on the Meuse River. The Germans have concentrated heavy forces at the river to stop the Allied advance. The 2nd Battalion attacks and is immediately hit by fierce artillery, mortar, and small arms fire. The attack stalls. Men are taking cover, unable to move forward. Urban leaves his command post and moves to the lead position of the battalion. He reorganizes the attacking elements, rallies the men, and personally leads a charge across open terrain toward the German strongpoint. As the charge moves forward, a German machine gunner fires directly at Urban. The burst hits him in the neck. The bullet tears through his throat, severing a vocal cord and causing massive bleeding. Urban collapses. 2 of his men reach him immediately. They plug the wounds in his neck and wrap bandages around his throat to stop the bleeding. Another soldier helps them drag Urban 100 yards to a muddy ditch while under continuous fire from German machine guns. The 2nd Battalion doctor and chaplain arrive. The doctor administers plasma and performs an emergency tracheotomy to keep Urban's airway open. The chaplain, seeing the severity of the wound and the doctor's expression, gives Urban last rites. Urban is conscious through all of this. He cannot speak above a whisper because of the damage to his vocal cords. He is in danger of bleeding to death. But when his officers tell him he is being evacuated, he shakes his head. He refuses to leave until the battalion secures the crossing point on the Meuse River. His men, inspired by his refusal to quit, attack again. They rout the Germans and secure the crossing. Only then does Urban allow himself to be carried off the battlefield to a field hospital. Let us talk about what Matt Urban actually endured over those 81 days, from June 14th to September 3rd, 1944, because the numbers help us understand why he became a legend. He was wounded 7 times. He refused evacuation 6 times. He left the hospital and returned to combat 3 times without authorization. He destroyed 2 German tanks with a bazooka while under direct fire. He mounted a tank and manned its machine gun while completely exposed to enemy fire to lead an assault. He led a charge across open terrain while already suffering from multiple wounds. His official Medal of Honor citation lists 10 separate acts of extraordinary heroism during just the Normandy campaign. That does not include his actions in North Africa, Sicily, or the other campaigns he fought in. He received 2 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars, 3 Purple Hearts, the French Croix de Guerre, and the Belgian Croix de Guerre. When he finally received the Medal of Honor in 1980, 35 years after the war ended, some people argued he was the most decorated soldier in American history. Others pointed out that Audie Murphy still held that record because Murphy received the Distinguished Service Cross, which Urban did not. But the debate itself shows how exceptional Urban's combat record was. The 7th wound, the one to his throat, nearly killed him. The bullet destroyed one of his vocal cords. For the rest of his life, Urban could only speak in a rough whisper. He spent months in hospitals recovering from his injuries. He was eventually sent back to the United States and discharged from active duty. The war in Europe ended in May 1945. Urban was not there to see it. He was still recovering from the wounds that should have killed him multiple times. Matt Urban was nominated for the Medal of Honor during the war. His commanding officers submitted the paperwork. Witnesses provided statements. The documentation was thorough and detailed. But somewhere in the chaos of the end of the war, the application was lost in Pentagon files. Urban received other medals. He was promoted to lieutenant colonel, but the Medal of Honor, the recognition for the actions that his men knew he deserved, never came. Urban did not complain. He did not lobby for recognition. He went back to Buffalo, New York, married, raised a family, and worked in business. He rarely spoke about the war. His friends and colleagues knew he was a veteran, but most of them did not know the full story of what he had done in France and Belgium. The men who served with him knew. They remembered. And in 1978, one of them found a copy of the original Medal of Honor nomination in the archives. The discovery triggered a review of Urban's military records. The documentation was still there, buried in files that had been misfiled or overlooked for 3 decades. When the review confirmed that Urban had been properly nominated and that the medal had never been awarded due to administrative error, the Army moved to correct the mistake. On July 19, 1980, President Jimmy Carter presented the Medal of Honor to Lieutenant Colonel Matt Urban in a ceremony at the White House. Carter described Urban as the greatest soldier in American history. Urban, speaking in the rough whisper that was all his damaged vocal cords allowed, simply thanked the president and his men. The Germans called him the Gray Ghost because he kept coming back. They shot him, shelled him, hit him with tank fire and wounded him 7 times, but he would not stay down. He would disappear for a few days or weeks, and then he would be back on the battlefield, leading his men, charging German positions and disrupting their defenses. For the German soldiers facing the 2nd Battalion, Urban became a symbol of American resilience and aggression. He was the officer who could not be killed. But Urban did not see himself as a ghost or a legend. He saw himself as a company commander and later a battalion commander who had a responsibility to his men. When he left the hospital in England and hitchhiked back to France, he was not seeking glory. He was responding to reports that his unit was suffering heavy casualties and needed experienced leaders. When he refused evacuation after being wounded, he was not trying to be heroic. He was ensuring that his men completed their mission and did not die in failed attacks. That mindset, the absolute refusal to abandon his men no matter the cost to himself, is what made Urban exceptional. There were thousands of brave officers in World War II. Many of them were killed leading their men into combat. Urban survived because of luck, medical care, and perhaps a stubbornness that bordered on the supernatural. But what he did with that survival, the repeated choice to return to the most dangerous positions on the battlefield, is what earned him the respect of everyone who served with him. The men of the 2nd Battalion, 60th Infantry Regiment, did not forget what Matt Urban did for them. They knew that their survival, in many cases, was directly tied to his leadership. When the battalion was pinned down by tanks at Renouf, Urban destroyed those tanks and opened the way forward. When the battalion was stalled by a German strongpoint in late July, Urban mounted a tank under fire and led the assault that broke the position. When the battalion needed to cross the Meuse River in September, Urban led the charge that secured the crossing even after being shot in the throat. After the war, those men went home to their families and their lives, but they carried the memory of what Urban had done. They told their children and grandchildren about the captain who kept coming back from the hospital to fight beside them. They wrote letters and made phone calls when they learned that Urban had never received the Medal of Honor he had been nominated for. And when the medal was finally awarded in 1980, many of them traveled to Washington to see their commander receive the recognition he deserved. Urban's leadership style was not complicated. He did not rely on speeches or charisma. He led by example. When he told his men to charge, he charged first. When he told them to hold a position, he stood with them. When the situation seemed hopeless, he found a way forward. That kind of leadership cannot be taught in a classroom. It is forged in combat under fire when the choices are to act or to watch your men die. Matt Urban lived until March 5, 1995. He was 75 years old. He had lived for 50 years after the war that defined him. He worked in business, stayed active in veterans organizations, and spoke occasionally at schools and events about his experiences. He never fully regained his voice. The damage to his vocal cords was permanent, but he did not need a loud voice to command respect. The people who knew his story understood what he represented. His Medal of Honor citation covers the period from June 14th to September 3rd, 1944. 81 days. In that time, he was wounded 7 times, destroyed 2 tanks, led multiple assaults under fire, and refused evacuation 6 times. The citation describes those actions in formal military language. Bold, heroic actions, exemplified by singularly outstanding combat leadership, personal bravery, and tenacious devotion to duty. But the words do not capture what it felt like to be in the hedgerows with Urban, watching him stand up with a bazooka while German tanks fired at his position. They do not capture the moment when he climbed onto that tank with bullets ricocheting around him. They do not capture the whispered orders he gave after being shot in the throat, refusing to leave until his men were safe. Urban's story is a reminder that heroism is not a single act. It is a series of choices made under pressure, often when injured, exhausted, and facing almost certain death. Urban made those choices repeatedly over 81 days. He could have stayed in the hospital in England. He could have accepted evacuation after the first wound, or the second, or the third. He could have moved to a safer command post after being promoted to battalion commander. But he did not do any of those things. He kept coming back. He kept leading from the front, and he kept his men alive. The Germans called him the Gray Ghost. His men called him captain and later colonel. History calls him one of the most decorated soldiers in American military history. But Matt Urban probably thought of himself as something simpler, a soldier who did his job. And his job, as he understood it, was to lead his men through the worst combat of the European theater and bring as many of them home alive as possible. He succeeded, and the cost of that success was written in 7 wounds, a destroyed vocal cord, and a lifetime of pain that he never complained about. That is the legacy of the Gray Ghost.